John Charles Barnes was born in Jamaica on November the 7th, 1963. His father Ken played centre-half for the island, and his hero was the gentle giant, John Charles of Wales. As well as all its cricketers, Jamaica has also produced the likes of sprinter Ben Johnson and boxer Lloyd Honeyghan. Now, the story goes his dad was so keen for baby John to have a sporting future that he put a tiny ball into his crib.
Well, it was my mum who actually threw the football in the crib, so I was told. You know, being that age, I don't actually remember it. But my father played football for Jamaica. He was a centre-half, as you say, but I mean, he made his debut for Jamaica, I think, when he was about 29, 30. You know, he played for the army team, and being a major in the army was at the time, captain or major. He was, of course, the captain because he was a major and he used to order everyone around. And I suppose the Jamaica national team thought that they needed someone of his discipline to come and, because they're not the most disciplined players in the world. So he got inside, maybe he was 29. So I think when I was about 4 or 5, he actually stopped playing for Jamaica. I think my sister was the only one who's seen him play, my eldest sister, and she was only about 4 or 5 at the time herself, you know. So growing up, I don't remember my father playing football at all, apart from with me in the park or whatever, you know, but not for a club, or I haven't even seen him play for the army. But they tell me he wasn't too bad.
How big an influence would your father have been in you taking up football, you starting to kick a ball around in those early days then? He
would have been the major influence, you know, because, as I said, I don't actually remember him playing for the country or a club or anything, but I mean, ever since I could walk, he would always have me out in the garden or out in the park playing football, you know, ever since I can remember.
I think, though, it was your mum, wasn't it, who was the disciplinarian, if you like, in the household?
Yeah, not as bad as the papers make out, but she was a disciplinarian. You know, I think that my father, being in the army, everyone expected him to be because, of course, he's in the army and the strict discipline that's necessary there. But, you know, I think in the house it's different. He just let her bring up the kids, really.
And what were you like as a kid?
Very naughty, like any other kid. You know, I didn't think I was that bad, actually, but I think I had 2 ultra-good sisters, you know, who were just perfect angels. And there's only a year in between all of us, you know, so we were similar ages. So we weren't treated any different. And me being the only boy also didn't help, you know, because it's always like them picking on me or me picking on them, or whichever way you want to look at it. So, and of course, me being the boy and my father being in the army and being of the thought that boys shouldn't hit girls, no matter if they're bigger and stronger than them, I really got the brunt of most of the discipline.
But I think I'm right in saying that it's a trait of the Barnes family that you're all high achievers. You've all really achieved your maximum potential, no matter what you've tried to do.
Well, I think that luckily I played football because I don't think I could have achieved my maximum potential in anything else. But yeah, the rest of them, they've all done very well. Gillian is now doing her master's degree at Washington University. She was in Missouri, now she's at Washington University. She got there on a Teddy scholarship and now she's doing her master's in international relations. Tracy's a lawyer. She used to swim for Jamaica and now she plays squash for Jamaica, funnily enough. She took up squash late. So she's a lawyer who's just gone with a bank now because she used to do criminal law and, you know, she couldn't live with her conscience, she tells me. So now she's just taking it easy at the bank. But growing up, it was all sport. You know, they've really done well for themselves scholastically. But, you know, growing up, although they were always good at school, apart from me, I think that sport was the major influence in all our lives.
Was that something that your family drummed into you then, John, that no matter what you tried to do, eventually you had to do it to your full capability, you had to give it your best shot?
Well, not really, but I think that he didn't teach me a lesson, but he instilled that particular thing at an early age, because I remember we used to swim. In fact, I was swimming competitively before I was playing football at like 7, 8 years old. And we used to swim in the National Stadium, which is only a mile from where we live. So we used to walk to the National Stadium, the 3 of us, me and my 2 sisters. And we had to pass a football field where all my friends were playing football we trained every day to go to training. So on the odd day, I would stop off and not go to training and play football instead. So he said to me, either you go training every day or you play football. So my swimming career came to an end at the age of about 9. So, and Tracy continued and swam for Jamaica and went on. But you know, that's when my swimming ended.
Would you describe your childhood as a privileged childhood in Jamaica?
Looking back on it, I would. At the time, I probably didn't think so. I think we were very fortunate because, you know, growing up is very difficult in Kingston, particularly. You know, there's a lot of trouble there. But being in the army, we were brought up on the army base, which is like a village. It's, I don't know, 10 square miles, 20 square miles even. and they've got all the facilities, everything there. And of course, no one's allowed on there unless you're in the army. So, you know, there's no trouble at all. So I remember being 7 and 8, being out till 10 and 11 o'clock at night, you know, and my parents were worried about me because they knew I had to be on the army base no matter where I was, whether I was at a friend's house or playing football or down the road or wherever I was swimming, wherever, because it was very safe. Because to be on the streets at 11 o'clock as a 20-year-old, much as an 8-year-old in Kingston, isn't very safe. So, but I just took it for granted. It's not until I actually came here when I was 13, and then, you know, they're saying come home by 9 o'clock, by 10 o'clock, and I thought, well, I was an 8-year-old running around, you know. But in saying that, I think that the fact that we were safe there, they didn't really worry about it too much.
How much of an affinity do you still feel now with that island of Jamaica?
Well, I mean, it's my second home, or my first home, depending on how you want to look at it. I mean, all my family's there, my mum, my dad, everyone's there, apart from Susie and the kids. You know, they're my family here. My family, the rest of my family are in Jamaica. But I think that I lived in Jamaica long enough to still regard it partly as my home. You know, I was there till I was 13, so I still regard it as my home, you know. I think had I come here maybe when I was 7 or 8, and the whole family came and we still lived here, I think that this really would have been my home. But I mean, every year now, for however long I get off, maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 8 days as it was this year, I go back to Jamaica.
He had to leave the warmth of Jamaica when his father, Colonel Ken, was posted to London as military attaché. By now, John was a good cricketer and a tennis player too, but football was his obsession.
I loved football, you know, always. And when we heard we were coming to England, which is the home of football, you know, I was really excited. And it was January the 26th, which isn't the best time to come to England at all. And I remember landing at Heathrow, and of course around Heathrow there's a lot of open fields, and it was a Sunday morning, and there were a lot of football pitches. You know, around Heathrow they have a lot of pitches. It's a big open area, and on Sunday mornings when the kids play. And I'd not really seen organised kids playing football in proper kit and everything. You know, in Jamaica we used to play on the pitch, put some coats down and kick around in your shorts and your training shoes or whatever. But I mean, these kids, all 11 of them had on the same kit. They were linesmen and everything. My age, even younger than me. You know, so that is the first impression I had. Apart from all the white snow on the ground, which I didn't, you know, quite fancy it. But you know, I think I was lucky in that when I arrived at Heathrow, there were a lot of games going on, and that really just made it for me.
At that time, John, had anybody actually taught you how to play the game of football, or had you learnt it all yourself?
Well, no one had actually taught me. My father had, in fact, taught me to appreciate my teammates, which is really not the thing to do in Jamaica. You know, it's all about individual skills and keeping the ball up and, you know, showing off, as it were. And I love doing that. But of course, my father, being the type of person he was, he used to organise the boys and say, well, you know, you got to have teamwork and discipline and this and that. And me being his son, I really had to, you know, show the others as well. You know, not that I wanted to, but because I was his son, that I really had to do that. So I think that's where I got the discipline. I don't know if any people say I've got a lot of discipline in football now, but imagine I would have had even less. But that's where my early discipline started, in football.
And that discipline meant for 4 years John Barnes played as a defender, captain and centre-half for Stowe Boys Club in Regent's Park, central London, close to the family home in Baker Street. Most weeks, Stowe scored double figures. They won the national five-a-sides when John Barnes was just 15. And when he moved to Sudbury Court in the Middlesex League, they spotted his attacking potential. So did a fan of Watford Football Club. But the Barnes family were preparing to return to Jamaica. How apprehensive was Ken Barnes about leaving his son to his own devices in the big city?
He was just 17 at the time, and of course, you know, you worry about a boy who's only 17, being left on his own. And of course, I wasn't sure whether he would make the grade at the time. You know, I felt he had talent, but thousands of other youngsters have talent. I wasn't certain how well he would do, so I was a little bit worried. But that's what he wanted to do, and of course, I always encouraged him. So it turned out well for him.
I never ever thought about whether I was going to be good enough to make it. I only thought about being a professional footballer. I didn't think, well, am I going to be good enough? You know, because I don't think many people think that. You know, you're just sure that you are going to be good enough. You know, you want it so badly that you are going to be good enough. That's the first time I actually thought of being a professional footballer. You know, not whether I was going to be good enough, because I was, you know, I thought I was just going to go back to Jamaica because my father had already been recalled. We were going to go back within the year, and I was going to go back with him, as far as I knew. But then when this came about, I thought, well, why not?
Watford knew immediately they had discovered a footballing treasure. At first, he'd agreed just to train at Vicarage Road on Tuesday evenings, on the strict understanding, no matter what happened, he was going back home to Jamaica. but his progress was staggering. 7 months after first thinking about being a pro, he was one. At 17, he was in Graham Taylor's first team. Within a year, he'd put on 2 stones to cope with the physical demands of the British game. The Watford youth coach Tom Wally said, "Managers pray every night to find a John Barnes."
A supporter, in fact, phoned up the club and said that a friend of his had seen a young boy that he thought was well worth watching. We went and watched him, we saw him, we gave him half a game, we hid him and signed him as quickly as we could. You don't need to be an expert, you see. People turn around and say, well, look at that, how did they get him? You don't need to be an expert. You see it, you get it, you don't mess about.
Yes, tell me about this now.
Well, he has an awareness, he has a touch on the ball, he knows what he's doing, got a little bit of a break but reacts quickly and then sees people there, just gets that little bit extra. And he'll be talking to Les Taylor about that.
There was a moment too where Willie Donachie, who's a very experienced Scottish international player, comes out to shadow him here, and he shows him the ball and then just takes it away from him.
Yes, well, we always ask him to at least give us one of those during a game. He gets into trouble if he doesn't actually give us a sole of the foot movement, and I'm quite serious about that. Yes, we always ask him where his sole of the foot movement was in this particular game. Now, that's the balance that we're trying to achieve, because there's other things as well.
But he was very strict. He was a disciplinarian as well, you know, which I'd grown up with all my life. So, although people may find it difficult with him in the early days because he was so strict and so disciplined, I didn't find it that difficult with him. And luckily, you know, although he was a defender himself, he just loved forwards, and the forwards could do no wrong, you know. So, although I was a midfield player in those days, he put me on the left wing from my first match and took her from there.
Already Barnes was being compared to the likes of Tom Finney because of his grace, ability, intelligence and temperament. Graham Taylor had firm ideas about running a football club. He would never allow anyone to be a superstar. So was it a frightening regime for a teenager?
Yeah, I would say so. Not only from teenage eyes, I'm sure from everyone's, you know, Pat Rice, right? Pat Rice was the most experienced player there. You know, I don't know how Pat would look at it, but I mean, I'm sure that, well, he definitely put the frighteners on me. I'm sure he did on a lot of people. But of course, if you get results, that's the main thing. He was also a very good motivator. And it maybe motivated you by fear, but whatever it takes to motivate someone to do well, it's good.
If you weren't very fit, you couldn't play for Watford. The preparation was fun, but very, very strenuous, as Jimmy Greaves discovered when he came up against John Barnes in a training session.
The press up is there.
Is it?
Yeah. We come from there as quick as we can.
Oh, I see.
We get the chin in the middle of the ball there. And get the hands and keep those feet down there, Jim. And all we try to do now is lift off the ball.
John, that regimented way of playing that was very successful for Watford in those days, did it go against the grain from your own personal point of view?
Not really, because as I said, growing up in Jamaica, although, you know, it's all about skill and flair and whatever, I had that discipline from my father, you know. And then when I came to England, playing for Stowe, playing centre-half, being the most responsible one in the team, to stay at the back. And so I did have that in me, although I suppose you may look at it and say there was something dying to get out of you, which may be coming out now, kind of thing, you know. But it wasn't a problem. I didn't find it a problem. Although, because as I said also, there's still times when I did go beyond that regimented thing and do my own thing. And sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. But I didn't find a problem combining them both.
Well, that style of training and football certainly had enormous success. Watford rose from the 4th Division all the way to the 1st under Graham Taylor. Some critics felt that Watford's long ball game should have been sunk without trace, but it was exciting and very effective. It would never work in the 1st Division, said the opposition. How wrong they were. Well, that style of training and football certainly had enormous success. Watford rose from the 4th Division all the way to the 1st under Graham Taylor. Some critics felt that Watford's long ball game should have been sunk without trace, but it was exciting and very effective. It would never work in the 1st Division, said the opposition. How wrong they were. Now John Barnes had the chance to parade his skills at the highest level, to run at and go past the best defenders in the country. The professionals say the 1st Division is the only place to play. John Barnes changed gears effortlessly. In 1983, John Barnes came on as substitute for England against Northern Ireland to make his first international appearance. And later that year, he made his first full appearance on tour in Australia. He was inches away from his first international goal as well. If there was craft and subtlety in his left foot, his right certainly wasn't just for standing on. But despite his status as a rising international star, John Barnes still found time to coach on the green playing fields of Eton College. Just over a century ago, Old Etonians had won the FA Cup, but since then they'd produced more prime ministers than footballers. The under-14s were John Barnes' team, and they loved every minute of his sessions.
So you should be half turn and then shoot. You see there, you shouldn't have a chance. What's happening is you're getting the ball, then you're turning, then you're shooting. That's it. That's it. Well done. Try and do it quickly so that you cut them out. Get the control right. That's it. Well done.
Well, one of the pastimes here at Eton is a very strange game indeed. It's called the Eton Wall game. They've been playing it for more than 200 years or so. Must be one of the most futile occupations ever devised, because basically nobody ever scores. I think the last goal was some 90 years ago. Well, John Barnes is going to play now to see if he can manage to get that elusive goal.
How was the ball stretch? Okay.
Come on! Free! Go for the ball. I don't want you on the ball.
Nothing!
Got Duran.
Somewhere inside that scrum's a ball. They're trying to move it down the wall. No handling, forward passes or heeling is allowed. To score, you've got to hit the oak tree at one end or this garden door at the other. And coming up, a rare opportunity for John Barnes to knock on the door. In 1984, the Wembley doors opened for John Barnes in the FA Cup final. Everton were the opposition. Watford fans felt it was the final chapter of the incredible dream. The pre-Wembley publicity built up Barnes as the match winner. Chairman.John was determined to enjoy every minute. But Watford fluttered briefly, like a candle in the wind. Barnes, though, was uninhibited. No Wembley nerves for him. An early goal, and it could have all been so different. But in the history books, this final will probably be remembered more for Barnes' blossoming skills than for Everton's victory. Everton won 2-0, but it was a good final. John fought back the tears as he did his best to console his young team. Accepting defeat with dignity is essential but tough, and all part of the learning process.
I would not have liked to have left Watford before I did. You know, I think I was doing well enough to have gone to another club at 19, 20, 21. But you know, after just being in the professional game when I was 17, I wasn't an apprentice or anything. You know, it's only 2 years, so I was looking at it as still learning my trade, as it were. You know, and I think that I left when I was 23, and I think that those early days at Watford, in fact, my whole 6 years at Watford, I regard as early learning days. I definitely needed those days at a club like Watford.
Now Barnes was on the verge of a move to a top club, but he was very loyal to Graham Taylor and Watford. His confidence, never a problem, was at an all-time high.
Well, since everything has gone so well, I can't help but have the confidence, because since I've been at Watford, Watford got promotion. FA Cup final this year, runners-up last year, everything has gone so well. But there's been occasions when I or Watford haven't played too well. In the next game, I'm a bit, you know, nervous about it.
There's always a great debate about which is your best position. Which is your favourite position?
Well, at the moment, I seem to be more effective on the left wing, so I would have to say left wing.
Barnes' brilliance was the heartbeat of Watford. Modest and immaculately behaved, he was immensely popular with the Hornets fans. John and Graham Taylor both knew they had to enjoy his talent while they could. In June '84, Barnes and England played Brazil at the Maracanã. The fans here have been weaned on a diet of Garrincha, Pelé, Rivellino and Zico. An Englishman made those maestros drool with envy. John Barnes of Watford had arrived on the international scene. That goal was played repeatedly by every television station with a football audience. His England place seemed assured. It wasn't. Was that piece of Maracanã magic a burden for him in later years?
That works for and against me, because a lot of people only remember me for that. You know, I think now I've gone to Liverpool is slightly different because of what I've achieved there, but even certain people still, you know, will look back at that goal and said, well, that's all he's done for England, blah, blah, blah. But if that is all I'm going to be remembered for doing for England. I wouldn't have it any other way. You know, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I mean, I love Brazilian football, and even just to play in the Maracanã against Brazil was, you know, I found that it was tremendous. So to actually score a goal like that, you know, this is the other side of it now, whereby if I never play for England again, you know, they can't take that away from me, and I'm so glad that happened, you know. But then on the other hand, it's not nice, 7 years later, for people to be saying, oh, John Barnes, yeah, he scored that goal against Brazil in 1984, you know, but can't have it always. In his wiseness, he probably knew it before me, you know. He may tell you, I mean, you may read and you'll know that the last, I don't know, 4 months didn't particularly go too well for us, you know. Because of there was talk about me leaving and not leaving or whatever, and it affected me. It affected my form, and I was down in that period. And you know, he wouldn't let me be because, of course, we still had to play and we still had to win. So the last 4 months really did affect me. But I think that I knew that would be my final season at Watford, and I think he knew it before me. I mean, he virtually told me you had to go. You know, for your own benefit, not for Watford. I mean, it would have been great had I stayed. You know, it would have been good for Watford. It may have been good for myself. Just like if I'd left Watford at 19, who knows what would have happened? Maybe we would have gone on and done great things. But I think that, you know, 23 years old, been there for 6 years. Watford had done whatever you set out to achieve. Like Wimbledon now, you know, you're talking about from the 4th division to the 1st division, cup final, 2nd place. They're never going to be able to compete with the big Arsenals and Manchester United and Tottenhams. And I think that Watford had achieved all that it was going to achieve. Maybe there were Spurs or Arsenal, I don't know who was interested, but Liverpool were the only ones who made a firm bid, you know. So although it may sound funny to say that, but I had no choice. And what a choice to have to make.
So Kenny Dalglish took John Barnes to Anfield for £900,000. A black footballer had never played a major role in Liverpool's triumphs, and Barnes was also leaving the family atmosphere of Watford.
It was a big wrench, but it was a very exciting time because you're going to a new club. I mean, even if I'd gone to another club, maybe even a 2nd division club, whatever, I think that because it was a change, it was going to be excitement. You know, a new season, new surroundings, and especially being at a big club like Liverpool, you know, it was very exciting.
I can remember vividly at that time, Liverpool supporters, when they heard you were joining them, saying, well, John Barnes is not going to make it here because he's black.
Well, had I gone there, and luckily for me, I did very well in the first 3 games, so they were really on my side from then. But I think from their point of view, there was a lot of umming and ahhing over the deal in the first place. You know, some newspaper reports were saying, well, he doesn't want to come and this and that, and there were people in the paper saying, well, he's giving Liverpool the cold shoulder. So, of course, before I was even there, it was a negative attitude towards me anyway, I think. You know, regardless of whether I was black or white. I mean, being black probably didn't help, but I mean, even if I was white, with all the umming and ahhing before, it was a negative attitude. But as soon as I got there, and fortunately, I think that there was a hole in the cup or something like that, so the first 2 games were away. So the travelling supporters who came away told the home supporters that the boy Barnes can play a bit, I suppose. And in the first home game, I scored against Oxford and played well. And ever since then, you know, I can do no wrong. I mean, I have terrible games, and it's not my fault as far as the fans are concerned. So they've just been brilliant to me ever since.
August 87, John Barnes' Liverpool debut at Highbury. 9 minutes gone, Barnes cross, goal for Aldridge. Liverpool beat Arsenal 2-1. The Kop had a new hero. These fans aren't interested in colour, creed or religion. Can he play has always been their priority. Colour's never been a problem to John Barnes. It wasn't for the supporters who packed this Kop either. They adored him.
My colour wouldn't be a problem to me, and to people who matter, my colour wouldn't be a problem. If my colour was a problem to anyone, those people wouldn't interest me and they wouldn't affect me at all, you know. So I would never let my colour affect me in any way whatsoever. If it was all the fans, if it was the whole of Liverpool who were against me because of my colour, as long as Kenny Dalglish and my teammates were happy with me and kept picking me, it would not. The fact that they were against me because I was black wouldn't affect me, you know, because I wouldn't let people like that affect me. I'd be the loser.
Liverpool and the Anfield fans were the winners. Barnes was an instant hit. He'd strengthened a team that already had an air of invincibility about it. Within a couple of months, he was looking a £900,000 bargain.
What would you describe as the major differences between playing for Liverpool and playing for Watford?
Well, you're playing with better players, which is the obvious difference. Consequently, the attitude of the staff towards the players are different. As I said with Graham Taylor, we all know what it was like playing on the Graham Taylor, and you know, he really made Watford play the way that he wanted them to play. Whereas at Liverpool, you'll play the way you want to play, and it'll as long as it fits into the pattern, because that is the main thing. You know, you can't be that much of an individual to just go and do your own thing. But I think you get more scope to be an individual in the Liverpool team.
And how would you compare the two managers, Graham Taylor and Kenny Dalglish?
Very difficult. I would say they're on opposite ends of the scales. I mean, but you see, I played under Graham Taylor when he's managing Watford. He's changed since he's managed England. You know, he's got similar to Kenny Dalglish now, more like him in that he let the players go out there and play, and he'll motivate them and give them little tips here and there. But he lets the players play, which is what Kenny Dalglish does. But of course, I've only played under Graham Taylor for England for one game, whereas I played on him for Watford for 7 years. Whereas with Kenny Dalglish, all I've known with Kenny Dalglish is being able to go out there and express himself and play as long as he fits into the pattern. But now, from what I can gather from Graham Taylor, speaking to him now and seeing him with the England setup, they're very similar.
So you're really saying that all Kenny Dalglish says to you and the rest of the Liverpool players is just go out and play your normal game?
Yeah, and he motivates you. And of course, as a coach and manager, they'll give you little tips and say, well, maybe you could do this or you could do that. But, I think that he buys the players who he thinks know how to play and can think for themselves. And although he'll give them little tips and, you do have to work around the system, he virtually lets you go out there and play. Of course, what happens then is if you go out there and you're not playing how you're supposed to play, that's when he'll come in and he'll say, blah, 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 whatever, do this or do that.
What sort of management do you think you respond to best?
I will respond to a manager who will motivate me in the way that I like, which is like, encouraging me all the time and saying you're doing well. Maybe it's wrong, maybe it's right. I will respond to that. Some managers will motivate players in the same way. They will have a go at them left, right and centre because that's the way they believe that to motivate players. Now, you can motivate some players that way, but you can't motivate others. Now, I think a good manager is one who can recognise how to motivate certain players, or you can't mollycoddle all the players because some players won't be motivated by that. Some players need a good kick up the backside to be motivated. I'm not one of them. If the manager starts having a go at me, I'll turn away from him. And ultimately it'll affect my game, which is probably a fault of mine because he shouldn't. But, that isn't my nature. So I like a manager who will say, well, okay, well, things aren't going too well, but keep trying and do this and do that. Then I'll respond to that. Where certain players don't, certain players need a kick up the backside.
So, friendly encouragement rather than threatening and ranting is the style of management that John Barnes appreciates. Under Kenny Dalglish, his game flourished. Liverpool would be champions twice in 3 seasons. Barnes was exciting and creative and gave a fascinating insight into his playing psychology. I've been
playing football for as long as I can remember. I have a picture of me in the cot with a football in it. My father used to play for Jamaica and he always encouraged me to play. I remember 5, 6-year-old playing football. That's what I remember doing. I don't remember doing anything else. I don't remember much about school. I think if Liverpool wanted to buy a player to come and just be a passer, I don't think they would have bought me. Obviously, I've got to fit into the way Liverpool play, but I fit into the pattern and still have my own individualism. Liverpool don't really put that much pressure on you. You have to perform, but they just tell you to go out and play. The management and the staff have been brilliant. Just so you go out there and express yourself, all the players. So although there is a lot of pressure on you, I don't think it's put on you by the staff or by the management. It's just that you know that you're at the best club in England and you really, you have to succeed. And all the players have a lot of freedom to go everywhere as long as you keep the shape. Because I could go over to the right if Ray Houghton comes over to the left, but I wouldn't go over to the right if he's over there. But we do have a lot of freedom in terms of movement, but as long as you keep the shape of the side. My balance, as with most players, as I said, balance is probably the biggest asset of a footballer. And I think that my balance is quite good. So that's the ability to change direction, the ability to ride tackles. It's all about balance. Anyone can ride a tackle, jump over a tackle, but it's a question of keeping going when you land on the other side and not falling over. The team comes first, so obviously, I think that's why I've become a better player, because I'm now releasing the ball earlier. I know when to release it, I know when to run with it now. I do get frustrated if I don't get the ball, and I feel I'm not doing well. Even if, for one reason or the other, we're under the cosh, or the ball just happens to be on the right and not on the left. Because I always evaluate my performance as to what I do with the ball, how many crosses I get in, how many times I go past an opponent. So regardless of whether I'm getting the ball or not, if I'm not doing those things, I don't feel that I'm performing well. So every time I get the ball, I always feel that there's an end. There's either going to be a shot, a cross, or something happening. It doesn't always happen that way. It can't. There'll be goals going in everywhere. But I think that most forwards think that way. When they get the ball, there's going to be an end product. Whenever we win, that's when we experience real joy.
And do you think the fact that Liverpool in general tend to dominate the opposition has helped you as well, because you get the ball in a lot more attacking situations than you were doing it in a struggling side?
Definitely. I mean, and why I think I've also improved is that there are times when I get the ball for Liverpool and I'll just lay it off first time. Even if I've got only one person to beat, I'll just lay it off first time because that's what I think's the right thing to do, and because I know that I'm going to get it again in 2 minutes, and then I can do what I like doing, taking players on or whatever. Whereas in other situations, I'll get the ball and if the team I'm playing for isn't that dominant, and I know that I've got to do something spectacular now because I'm not going to see the ball for another 10 minutes kind of thing, you know what I mean? And then I may lose it. And then if I do get it again, it's even harder because I realise I've got to do something twice as spectacular as what I was going to do before. And then you just get into a rut because the harder you try, the worse it becomes, So for Liverpool, it's brilliant because I can just play it simple. And I could even lose the ball 50% of the time, but I know that 50% of the time I'm going to be successful. And 50% of the time for Liverpool is a hell of a lot. It's like, I don't know, get the ball 30 times, it's being successful 15 times, which may mean 2 goals, 8 crosses, 4 shots kind of thing, which is a good game.
His fellow professionals voted him PFA Footballer of the Year in his first Anfield season. He did the double that year, collecting the prestigious Football Writers' Award as well. Liverpool won the league, but their anticipated double failed to materialise in another Wembley disappointment. That glittering night, when his colleagues voted him as their prime performer, was forgotten. Liverpool were on the receiving end of one of the great cup upsets of all time.
We were on for the double that year, and I've read reports that certain Wimbledon players are saying that they scared us in the tunnel by all these chants and whatever. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I wasn't even aware of it, of any chants, because we were going out there to play a match, and if they were having to be shouting, they were shouting. I mean, tell you what, I was more afraid of when we played Cameroon, because that's real. If the Wimbledon players think they can chant, they should have heard the Cameroon players when we were playing them in the tunnel. So, but I don't think that didn't affect us at all. We just didn't play on the day, I don't know why, but we just didn't play on the day. We didn't create enough chances. That wasn't a Liverpool performance. And which happens. It happened to be in a cup final, so people remember it, and they may say, because it's Wimbledon or because it's a cup final, this has happened. But it's happened in ordinary league matches. It's happened, and because no one's there and the televisions aren't there, no one says anything. They just say bad Liverpool performance. That was just a bad Liverpool performance.
Now John Barnes was a regular in Bobby Robson's England team, building up for the European Championships in West Germany. There was a growing frustration that Barnes of England wasn't the same player as Barnes of Liverpool. But in a qualifier against Turkey at Wembley, Barnes got a beauty. And then linked impressively with Peter Beardsley, an Anfield goal in an England shirt. England finished with 8 on that October night. So hopes were high for the European Championships, but England's qualifying form was deceptive. In a disastrous week, they lost to the Republic of Ireland, to Holland, and to the Soviet Union. Brian Robson's goal against the Dutch was no consolation. The knives were out for Bobby Robson and his coach Don Howe. The players were castigated too. John Barnes was accused of being too laid back, too casual, indifferent to the demands of the international game.
I suppose Glenn Hoddle went through it before, and I had to get Glenn on this video anyway, by the way. I'm just saying Glenn because he's my favourite player. But so I suppose he went through that, through his career, because I tell you, I know that if Glenn Hoddle had been French, Italian, German, he would have had 100 caps now, and he would be the player in that particular country, without a shadow of a doubt. He's the most talented player, and look what's happened to him as far as England goes. He went to France as a 29, 30-year-old, one of the best foreign players in France, had a lot of good foreign players, and he's a revelation in France because he's suited to that type of football. Now, I'm not talking about me being suited to any type of football or whatever, but I'm just saying the type of players, myself, Chris, Glenn Hoddle, I think that it's going to be very difficult for us to shine in the international team. Well, it had been. Hopefully it'll be different now.
You see, John, I think it's the expectation that is held against you in some ways, in that people expect you to do fantastic things for
Well,
England, and when it doesn't happen,
Yeah.
they turn
the
against
disappointment is great. Yeah, I understand that. I understand that. And the expectancy is right because you do it. And so they know you can do it. So why don't you do it for your country? So I don't expect anything less. I don't expect them to expect anything less of me as a player, me personally. But I think then they've got to take into consideration the surroundings. You know, you've got to take the team and the way the team play and how the match is going and that kind of thing, really.
But for Liverpool, most of the matches went according to the script. Liverpool had won the league title in front of their own fans with 4 matches to spare. They were a class apart. As always, there'd been no boasts, crazy predictions or promises. Liverpool's gifted squad had gone about their business of winning more football matches than anybody else. And John Barnes had a championship medal. But the Liverpool style was very different to England.
If you look at international football, the Continentals, the South Americans, they play possession football, particularly the Continentals. You know, so they're keeping the ball for 2-3 minutes at a time, which is a long time in football, as you know. Whereas with England, when we get the ball, either we do something, have a shot, a cross, something exciting, or we lose it, you know, within 5-10 seconds. It'd be very difficult for us to play difficult for me to play for Liverpool, where I play for England, unless England does actually play a possession game as much as Liverpool, and, well, that's the main thing. You know, if England were to keep the ball a lot longer, there would be times when I get the ball from England, I'll lay it off first time, may lay the second one off first time. But I know that I'm going to have a lot of possession, and I'm going back to the fact that I lose the ball a lot for Liverpool as well. But, you know, incorporated in that is a lot of good things because we have a lot of possession. So I think if England does that, I think that I would then start to play much better for England.
At Liverpool, they're always looking ahead, always hoping to strengthen the team. Footballing perfection is an impossible dream. Sometimes, though, John Barnes gets perilously close to it.
Yourself regardless of how you want to be motivated by other people, you know, and, you know, that could differ in certain, you know, ways anyway. How you motivate yourself is the most important thing, and I motivate myself by telling myself that I'm a good player. Now, if things haven't gone well, of course, the initial depression is there and you're thinking, well, but then after, you know, maybe a day after, or even the same day, you know, you sit down and I'll sit down by myself and I'll say, well, I know that I'm a good player. And things haven't gone well now, things haven't gone well the game before, things haven't gone well for the last 50 games, whatever you want to say, but I know that I'm a good player. So, and then that's how I get myself going for the next game.
You've used a word once or twice, appreciation. Do you think that you are appreciated in British football?
For Liverpool, I am. For Liverpool, I am, yeah. And that is why I also understand, because, you know, I'm not making excuses or anything. I don't want people to think that, because I do understand why people expect so much of me, and I'm sure that if I wasn't John Barnes here, I'd be saying, why doesn't John Barnes do it for Liverpool, for England, like he does for Liverpool? You know, so I understand all that, you know, so it's not if I'm just looking at it from my point of view where I'm thinking, well, they don't understand me because they don't know the ups and downs and the ins and outs of it. So I do understand it, you know, so I can appreciate their point of view as well, you know, but going back to the original question, I am appreciated for Liverpool generally, and that is why probably I'm less appreciated for England.
Over the years, Barnes has had to cope with tremendous physical and a certain amount of verbal intimidation from some of the toughest defenders in world football. Like Gary Lineker, he's always managed to keep calm. Has he ever lost his temper?
Inwardly. People have always said this to me about being so placid on the pitch. You don't retaliate, you don't do this. You know, and I'll go back to what I was saying earlier about, you know, the chants from the crowd. You know, if I let it upset me, it's going to affect the way I play. And if I do get upset in the game and show people I'm upset, they'll do it more to affect my game. So, although inwardly I'll think so-and-so or whatever, I would never ever show. I would never be seen to lose my temper because it'll affect my game. I can control it if it's inside and I can play with it. But as long as outside influences, other people don't know about it, they can't affect me. They probably think, oh, we'll stop doing that because it's not affecting him. We'll stop kicking him, we'll stop doing whatever, you know, so.
Do you think that goes back again to your early days and to the discipline that was instilled in you?
Possibly. I really haven't thought about it that much. And I don't really want to start talking about psychology too much here because then, you know, who knows what's going to be in the paper when they see this video. But, you know, I really haven't thought about it that much, but it possibly has an effect.
I don't think I've seen you lose your temper ever, but I've seen the old eyes flash a few times and go even darker than they are at the moment.
Well, that's probably when the inward side of it, that's when the temper's probably coming out inside. But, you know, you bite your lip and you carry on and it's all forgotten about. I'm a very forgiving person. Unbelievably forgiving, you know. I surprise myself because no matter what people do to me, although, as I say, I may lose my temper and feel 5-10 minutes and it's all gone, forgotten about.
One episode in John Barnes' life that he'll never forget was the Hillsborough disaster in April 1989. 95 fans died at the FA Cup semi-final between Liverpool and Nottingham Forest. Anfield was a shrine. Many of the bereaved turned to the players for strength. Some players felt guilty, so many had died after coming to watch them play. Before Hillsborough, John Barnes had never been to a funeral. In 5 days, he attended 7 of them.
We went back to Sheffield on the Monday and went to the hospital, and I mean, that was such a moving experience. It was unbelievable. I think one or two people like woke up out of comas and stuff, you know, when they'd heard the voices and stuff like that. And a lot of them didn't know what had happened, you know, had we won, they were saying, and stuff like that, you know, and the way they were, I mean, I felt a bit embarrassed, a bit ashamed to be there, you know, because, as you say, you still feel guilty, you know, if we weren't there, and how are they going to react to us, because they were watching us, and here they are now on live support machines, but they were all brilliant. You know, the people who were in there saying, oh, yeah, started talking about previous matches, and I remember being at this game a couple of weeks ago when we were like, you know, and even the relatives and people are like, they were exactly the same. Everyone was fantastic.
John, was there any stage in that where you felt like just getting away from the game, that you felt like you never wanted to see a football again?
Well, as the day or the day after, the first couple of days, you know, you thought, well, you know, what's all this football about anyway, kind of thing, you know. People have been killed because you want to kick a football about and get paid for it, kind of thing, you know. And so what's it all about? But after a while, and to see the response that the people had towards us as well, in terms of us playing again that season or in the cup or whatever, seeing that response really helped. You know, everyone was saying, oh, well, you've got to play. I mean, people were still saying, oh, you've still got to play. People in the hospitals, you know, who are just getting better, just becoming conscious, were saying, oh, you've got to play, crying and saying, you've got to play and keep going, for the ones who had died. And obviously there were a few who said, well, no, you shouldn't play, and being very strong about it. But I mean, you know, you can't please everybody, and the majority of people wanted you to play. And I think that even if I had felt that I didn't want to play anymore, just to see the reaction of those people would have made me want to play then.
When it all started again, it was fitting, wasn't it? It was Liverpool and Everton playing each other on Merseyside.
Yeah, it was fitting, because the Everton supporters were tremendous as well, you know, throughout the Hillsborough. Because I know, I heard that a lot of them, even, when they heard, because I think they were playing at Aston Villa.
At Villa Park, yeah.
They were playing at Villa Park. And I mean, you see Evertonians, everyone was crying during the weeks after, and everyone was coming to Anfield, Liverpool and Evertonians. There's Liverpool and Everton scarves stretched all the way from Everton's ground to Liverpool's ground, tied together, because it is family, regardless. I mean, one brother supports Liverpool, one brother supports Everton. So they really were tremendous as well. So I think that the fact that it was a Liverpool Cup final, not Liverpool Football Club, Liverpool City Cup final, was extra special as well.
Once again, though, Liverpool missed out on the double. Arsenal won the title at Anfield with a goal in the last couple of minutes of the final match. But Hillsborough had brought these fans even closer together. Liverpool Football Club emerged from that awful tragedy with great credit. Life and football had to go on. For John Barnes, that meant raising his personal standards even higher.
You can always improve. You know, I think I can become a better player. Unfortunately, when I become a better player, I probably won't be able to run as quickly or run as long, you know, because you'll be a bit old then, you know. You see what you want the head of a 31, 32-year-old and the legs of a 23-year-old, but you're not going to get that, you know. So that's why they say you reach your peak when you're about 28, when you're somewhere in between, you know. But in saying that, we're all different. Maybe you reach your peak, maybe I reach my peak at 21, maybe I've passed my peak. I mean, who knows? So again, it's all speculation as to whether I will get better. But I have to believe I will, you know. But I mean, if I keep going the way I'm going, I'll be quite happy with settling for what I'm doing now anyway.
Liverpool would settle for the way he started the World Cup season. He was brilliant. At the age of 25, Barnes was approaching his peak. His control, balance and pace, much too much for Manchester City, just promoted from the second division. And against Graham Taylor's Aston Villa, Barnes gave his mentor a painful reminder of the skills he'd helped to mature in those early days at Vicarage Road. It's another superb individual goal. Away from football, John set up home with Susie Bicknell. They've been together ever since his early Watford days.
There were 4 sisters, you know, all of similar ages, and I didn't meet Susie till about 4. I met her sisters before I met her. She's older than me, as maybe you would have gathered, you know. I don't know if I'm much of a toy boy, but she's only a couple of years older than me. But, you know, then we started seeing each other, going out together, started living together when I was about 20, 19, you know. And got 2 lovely boys, Jamie and Jordan. And that's my home.
The family home is in Hertfordshire. John also uses a flat in Liverpool and commutes to Merseyside. Susie certainly isn't an avid reader of the small print on the sports pages. Has that helped John in any way?
I think probably it has in the end, because he gets so much football. Everybody wants to talk football to him, and I'm really not interested, I must say, at all in football. It's a change for him, I think, to find someone who doesn't actually want to talk about football or listen to it.
How much of the game does he bring back here when he's had a bad game, for example, or when he's been criticised? Does he bring the game back into the front room?
No, he doesn't, not at all. No, it's something that he's never done, never mentioned it. If he's had a good game or a bad game, he's exactly the same. I mean, sometimes now and again I'll actually ask him what the score was, and he'll say, "Oh, really?" You know, but no, never mentions it at all. It's something that's completely separate.
It's nice to get away from football, come home, play with the kids, and it's not like, "Oh, Dad, you know, we were at the match with you today and blah, 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 this and that, this and that." You know, football very rarely enters my home life at all, you know, apart from kids wanting to kick football, which is only natural anyway for all the kids.
I think if there's one thing that annoys you about John, it is the fact he gives away his England shirts all the time.
He's generous to a fault, let's put it that way. He's actually given away all of his England shirts now, so don't anyone ask me for any England shirts, because we don't have any. I did have one that I saved and I had tucked away, and he realised I actually had it tucked away and stole it from me the other week. So we actually haven't got any now at all. He's given them all away.
That's 0 out of nearly 60, isn't it?
Well, yes, that's right, yeah. But they've all gone to very good, worthwhile funds. Raised a lot of money.
Few teams can cope with the red shirts of Liverpool. They have that ability to adapt their style, like when they face the hard men of Wimbledon. Affection for Liverpool. But for England, Barnes still had to convince the doubters he was made of the right stuff. That brilliant Liverpool form only served to fan the critical flames. So could it be down to pre-match preparation and training methods? How do England and Liverpool compare?
At Liverpool, we don't train hard at all. You know, and I mean, the majority of my time in the England squad was with Watford, and I mean, England's training compared to Watford was like a picnic, really. You know, I mean, we used to train really hard at Watford. But I mean, since I've been at Liverpool, I have been aware of it, because I never used to think twice being at Watford, because it was like easier with England than with Watford, because I was just used to hard training all the time. You know, but I've noticed it after playing for Liverpool, and noticed that I haven't felt as sharp in matches as I have done for Liverpool. I think that most people, I mean, I'm sure the Forest lads would say the same, because I mean, I know they train probably even less at Forest than they do at Liverpool, you know, so maybe they'll notice it, I don't know.
It's now more than 13 years since John Barnes saw those snow-covered pitches around Heathrow Airport. The black tights and gloves show he still feels the cold. Mind you, you've got to be some player to get away with that gear.
Well, people always ask me this, and I say to them, of course, you know, when you're growing up, some of the nice answers, like, you know, listen to your coaches and, you know, be disciplined and that kind of thing. But the biggest thing is self-belief. You know, believe in yourself. Because self-belief can get you further than just ability alone. You know, if you believe you're a good player and you're not a good player, you're going to get much further than you actually should get. You know, so that'll help a lot of people as well. So self-belief is the biggest thing, as far as I can see. That's where English football, I think, has fallen behind with the Continentals, the South Americans, whoever, the rest. Because it doesn't really matter where you play. I think that these days, especially if you're going to play with man-to-man marking, you have to have a flexibility and movement within the team, you know, and especially as a forward, because your man-for-man marker is happy for you to stay in one position, because he's just going to stay there and not do anything, and he'll be happy. So I think that if you look at the other teams, the continental teams particularly, they play with so much movement up front that you can never say that this player, okay, you may say Mark van Basten is the centre forward, but he doesn't stay there. He's on the wing, he's midfield, he's all over the place. And I think that that's where English teams can improve with their movement, because then that's when people are going to get free. That's when I would lose my marker rather than staying in one position. So, you know, as I've said before, it doesn't really matter where I'm a forward. Now, a forward means playing anywhere along the front line, and that's the way to get the best out of me, I feel, rather than saying, okay, you're playing down the middle, so you're playing down the middle, stay down the middle, or you're playing on the left, so stay on the left.
We need Barnes to be Barnes that he plays for Liverpool. People think I stopped Barnes from being the Barnes of Liverpool. I don't, you know.
Do you think he thinks that?
I hope not. I mean, I keep saying, John, just play like you do for Kenny Dalglish. Play for me like you play for Liverpool. There's no reason now why John Barnes shouldn't do it all the time. He's got the class, he comes from good stock, he's got a good attitude, he's a lovely boy, he's intelligent. Come on, Johnny. Be what everybody sees you to be, you know, when we watch you on television.
Sadly, John Barnes didn't manage to recapture the form he'd shown against Uruguay. He was, by his own admission, very disappointing in the World Cup. An injury against Belgium was still troubling him against Cameroon. He had to miss the game against West Germany. It was a very unhappy time for Barnes. The England hero Paul Gascoigne took time out to cheer him up. England returned as heroes. John Barnes was submerged as Gazamania gripped the country. After the World Cup, Bobby Robson left to join PSV Eindhoven and Graham Taylor replaced him. Will things be easier for John Barnes now his old club manager has taken over?
There's no sentiment involved at all, and I don't expect any to be involved. No, Graham Taylor, if I'm not playing, he's going to... In fact, I would think that he probably would have left me out when Bobby Robson wouldn't have, you know.
You really feel that, do you?
Yeah, I think that if he felt that way, and there are times, I'm sure, when Bobby Robson felt like to leave me out to the side, but he knew what I could do, so he'll give me an... You know, I feel that Graham Taylor, at that point, for whatever reason, whether he thought that maybe it was getting a bit too much for me from a press point of view, whatever, he would have left me out if that's what he thought needed to be done. So I don't think there's any sentiment involved now, and I don't want any. You know, I want him to pick me on merit, not on because he was my manager for Watford for 7 years and he knows what I can do. So, you know, he's going to pick me on what I actually do. I think, as an entertaining player, success is wonderful. Success is good when you're actually playing. Win medals, fine, and of course when you get older, you've got the medals to prove it. But people look back, and people won't look back and they won't look back and say, "Oh, I remember John Barnes. He got an FA Cup finals, FA Cup winners medal." It's like the way people talk about Stan Bowles now. You know, I used to support QPR in that '77 year when I first came to England, and they were an excellent side. And you know, he's been my favourite player, Stan Bowles, because everything that he could do. George Best. People remember George Best for their ability and their entertaining qualities. Because apart from the European Championship, he hasn't done, well, obviously Northern Ireland, he hasn't played in a World Cup, George Best. So success is fine when you're actually there and you're getting the medals. And of course you look back and you say, well, I've got this from my own personal point of view, success is fine. But I want people to remember me as being an exciting player.
But after 2 championships, 3 FA Cup finals and over 60 England appearances, there's still plenty of football left in Barnes. There can't be a manager who wouldn't say, yes, I want John Barnes in my side.